Hello everyone, I'm Vince Rocco in New York, so let's get right to what everyone is talking about. Today on the show, international buyers continue to play a vital role in New York City's luxury real estate market, particularly in the new condo development sector. Despite global economic fluctuations and shifting visa policies, New York City remains a premier destination for overseas investors seeking stability, prestige, and long-term value. Neighborhoods like Billionaires Row, Hudson Yards, Tribeca, and the Upper East Side remain perennial favorites due to their world-class architecture, top-tier amenities, and proximity to cultural and financial hubs. But meanwhile, areas such as downtown Brooklyn, Long Island City are emerging as hotspots, offering brand new inventory at relatively more accessible prices, appealing to both end users and investors alike. For many international buyers, owning a slice of New York City real estate is not just an investment, it's a global status symbol. And on set with me today here are Shlomi Ravani from Ravani Development Marketing and Susan Greenfield from Brown Harris Stevens. They join me now to discuss, but first, let me welcome my listeners and my viewers from across the United States, and all around the globe. This is Talking New York Real Estate, so let's go behind the headlines and inside real estate, the state of our industry.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So listen, I say this a lot, but really this morning I'm going to say it tremendously hard. We have two very solid rock star agents with us today, Susan and Shlomi. We're going to get into international buyers. We're going to get into new development condo sales. We're going to get a little bit into their backgrounds. Shlomi owns his own company. It's called Ravani Development Marketing. It's privately owned and operated. He's been in the business 30 plus years. Susan's been in the business 40 plus years, and boy, does she have a resume, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Once again, very, very influential in our industry, very successful in our industry, and it's always a delight for me to have such agents on the show. But Susan, I want to talk to you first and ask you about key factors that attract generally international buyers from anywhere, even if they're domestic, but they come from other lands. What really generally attracts them to want to invest here in New York City real estate, whether it's for an investment purpose or whether it's just for themselves to live in? There's something about New York that attracts international buyers. What is it?
Well, very often, an international buyer wants to have just a piece of New York. They might have homes all over the world, but New York is a special place for an international. Many of them have children that come to school here, and they visit and they realize what an opportunity it is to live here. So they want to be somewhere in Manhattan because they have a pied-à-terre, a piece of earth in Manhattan. And that's really how it begins. Many of them work here, and they want to have a solid piece of Manhattan for themselves in their portfolio. It's usually people that have experience all over the world, and they recognize that no matter what, Manhattan changes, the interest in money changes around the world, but everybody that I know that I've sold in Manhattan internationally, they want a piece of Manhattan.
Does our particular pricing, regardless of the price point, make any difference? Because a lot of times people are out there shopping for different price points, first-time buyers, second-time buyers, people who buy investment. Do they have any investors international buyers coming in, do they have any particular price point that they're stronger in, or is it just anything, any size, any room count?
It's their objective, because they might want to buy an apartment for their kids.
Right.
They might want to buy an apartment to boast to their friends. Some people generally go to a building, for example, and they buy, let's say, at 432 Park, and then they go to their friends and they say they bought at 432 Park.
Yeah.
And then they tend to bring their friends along with them. I think that I find, it depends upon the group as well. For example, certain groups from different countries buy in certain buildings as well, because it's kind of like a, copycat, basically.
Correct. You did it, so I need to do it. Or you did it, and I want to do it better. Shlomi, so let me ask you, through the years, and we'll go back to 2015, 2016, whatever it is, we've had a little bit of a slowdown, though, on foreign buyers. Now, you represent a lot of brand new condo developments, which is your forte here in New York City. Have you seen foreign buyers, international buyers, come back to the table more robustly, or is it still kind of like willy-nilly, some yes, some no? Where are we with that? It's been a big topic of conversation here on the program, but just in our industry in general.
Well, it's changed over the past 10 years. You mentioned 2015. 2014, 15, we saw a lot of foreign buyers from across the globe. Yeah. We saw them from South America, we saw them from Russia, we saw them from Europe, Asia for sure. Things have changed since 2015. We've had COVID, we've had interest rates changes, we've had some geopolitical events around the world that have prevented buyers from buying here. There's always been foreign buyers in New York. There's always going to be foreign buyers from New York for all the reasons that you just mentioned. Whether you're buying an apartment for your kid, whether you've made tremendous amount of money and you just need to have a piece of New York for status.
Piece of the earth, as Susan said. I'm going to remember that. That's a good one.
New York City is the most international global city in the world. If you own a piece of real estate here, you own a piece of the brand of New York.
Yeah.
So, but what we're seeing a lot lately, there's been a shift in terms of who's buying and why, right? We're not seeing Russians right now, naturally because of what's happening in Russia. We're not seeing as many Asian buyers as we did in past few years because it's just very difficult to move money around. And because of political issues, there might be some hesitancy to buy here. We've always seen South American buyers, and we continue to see them. We see them in Miami, we see them in New York. Middle East as well. Now, there's different levels of investments in the city. You can buy an apartment for your kid for $1 million because they're going to school here, or you can invest $200 million in a commercial property as well as a foreign fund. So the interest has always been here. It's just a matter of how much, at what frequency, at what prices. And you're correct to say that there are different price points, different objectives, and they're across the city, and they also obviously spill into Brooklyn and Long Island City as well. 80% of all transactions in the city on a regular basis are under $3 million. Within that sector of buyers, you see a lot of foreign buyers. But when you look at $4 million plus, all the way to $20, $30, $50 million, you do see a lot of local buyers today, but there's certainly a lot of foreign investments as well.
Indeed. All right, so you mentioned a couple, and I agree with you, buyers from Russia, buyers from Asia have slowed down a bit for a whole host of reasons, as you mentioned. But where specifically, other than South America, might these buyers be coming from, right? Where are they coming from?
Yeah.
Because we can label anybody outside of the USA as an international buyer, Canada, Mexico, but where are we seeing more people these days under the current, landscape? Where are they coming from?
Well, first of all, this past year, 2024, we did see a slowdown for a variety of reasons. But I think that I know that I had, from my perspective, over the last years, I had a lot of Turkish buyers. I had buyers from Monaco. I had buyers from Israel, a number of buyers from Israel.
Middle East, yeah.
Saudi Arabia. I had buyers from Latin America. I did not have Canadians at all. I shouldn't say that. I had one Canadian. But honestly, I personally have never had a lot of Canadian buyers, although when you look at statistics that are reported from the National Association of Realtors, they say the Canadians are the top.
You took the words out of my mouth.
I just don't understand where that comes from, because in Manhattan, I don't see that.
Well, here's the thing. I teach, and everybody on this program who listens or watches knows that I teach continuing ed in real estate, and we talk about it all the time. In my foreign buyer and seller class, we talk about just this. Canada happens to be up in the top two or three statistically.
Right.
But as you said, not here in New York City. But we have to remember something. As a country, the Canadians are buying all over the South. They like the warm weather because they come from cold weather. They're buying out in Arizona. They're buying out in the Midwest to Western regions, not necessarily here, which begs the question, and I've asked this question many times. No one can really give me an answer. So what's wrong with New York City investing? They don't buy here.
May I just interject one thought? You know, we're looking at residential, but there's also commercial investment.
Absolutely.
And there are funds like the Teachers Fund in Canada. And this is where I think that statistic might come from, the investment from funds that are Canadians, because sometimes you don't have the differentiation between where that money is coming from. It's just Canadian.
Right.
I think you need to qualify what you mean by investing. Any kind of a purchase of real estate
really,
in the United States by anyone from Canada, London, Monaco, South America, Middle East, regardless of the reasoning, is also an investment, right? So, and investments can vary, whether it's commercial, residential, whether you're part of a fund and that invests in real estate and the money is actually, let's say, comes from Canada, or you're purchasing an apartment for your kid, right?
Right.
Canadians have bought a lot of real estate in New York. A lot of it was for personal purposes and usage, like pied-à-terres, like and a family apartment in New York when they come to visit. But there's been a lot of purchases, a lot of investment, like you said, in Florida, in the Carolinas, in Arizona, et cetera, is second homes, vacation homes. Now, maybe we've seen less of it. I don't know the statistics about Canadian money coming in. But that level of investment is continued and is consistent from other parts of the world into the States. And I think it's going to continue, and I think it's actually going to grow. When you look at the world today, geopolitically, if you're a person of means or you are a capital entity and you're looking to diversify your portfolio, where do you put capital? Right. Do you invest it in Europe today? Do you invest it in Russia, in Asia, in South America, in the Middle East? Or do you invest it in the United States? The United States, for all its faults, right, is probably the best capital preservation in the world. And where would you put your money if you decide to put it in the U.S. other than real estate? You can buy stocks, you can buy bonds all day long. But buying real estate, traditionally, for many people, has been the safest investment.
Let's talk a little bit about the international buyers or their impact on pricing, regardless of where they come from. And we've run the gamut as to where they can come from, where they have come from. How do they impact pricing or competition in the luxury, let's say the luxury condo development market? Do they impact pricing at all or not?
I think it depends on the submarket. In other words, you can't just look at New York as one market. It is one market, but there are a lot of different submarkets within Manhattan.
Correct.
When you look at, let's just talk about Manhattan for a second. So Tribeca is very different from the Upper East Side. Upper East Side is very different from Midtown West. Midtown West is very different from the West Village, right? So within any given submarket, there's a level of inventory stock, there's a pipeline for new developments, and there's an inventory for resales. And sometimes supply is not as strong as other parts of the city. So if there is, and foreign buyers we find, regardless of what they come from, they love lifestyle. They love buildings with amenities. They love buildings with views. That's why you see Hudson Yards as a magnet for people from overseas where they purchase. Or Tribeca, a full-service building, high floors, nice views, beautiful amenities, lifestyle, branded lifestyles. They get attracted to it. So when they purchase there and there's a trend to purchase and the supply diminishes quickly, then it raises prices. And it raises prices for everyone else as well. But you could say that about any group of people at any price point that get attracted to a certain product. It just drives the price up. And there's, many such examples of new development projects that became very hot for whatever reason and because of very strong demand and very low supply within that building, prices are either holding steady or going up.
Susan, how has the strength of the U.S. dollar affected any kind of international investment here in New York City, or has it?
Well, I anticipate that we're going to have a lot more activity now because the dollar is 120 as opposed to the current, euro. And that hasn't been the case for a long time. So it's going to be far more attractive for foreign buyers to come into this market. And I'm gearing up for that because I believe that that's really the future of this coming year.
Well, I totally agree. Shlomi, how are developers looking at the whole foreign investment, again, foreign buyer, foreign investment, however you want to call them? How do they look at this group of folk coming into the country? Do they get stressed that there aren't enough of them? Are they okay with the fact that they're slowly starting to come back? What do they think about this?
Sure. So again, since what I do is new developments, and you mentioned developers, let me just qualify that as well. Because our developers, on one hand, have capital partners. Those capital partners may be foreign investors.
Correct.
So how do they attract foreign investors to invest in their deals in New York? And a good example of it is Related. The news just came out yesterday, I think,
That's right.
of a Saudi fund
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
heavily investing in Related,
Yeah.
right? So
Very interesting, by the way.
625 Madison.
Correct.
That's the
Yeah,
building.
very
and
interesting.
that's hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions. And if you look at the statistics of foreign funds investing in commercial that become residential deals in the city, just in the past 12 to 18 months, it's very high, right? So developers look at funds like that, whether it's from Europe, from South America, from the Middle East, from Asia, that are looking to invest in developers here in New York. That's one end of it. The other end of it is, of course, the end user buyers. How do you, as a developer or a marketing team, attract end user buyers? What is the demographic here? Where is the demand going to be for any specific project and any specific submarket, any specific product and price point? What type of clientele is it going to attract? Will it attract the pied-à-terres and those families that want to buy for their kids in the city because they go to schools here at, let's say, between $1 and $3 million? Or is it a different level of purchase from a foreign buyer and an investor who's looking, let's say, between 10 and 20 million? As a marketer and as a developer, you have to do that analysis and sort of understand who your buyer is. And once you figure that out and you focus on them, then how do you attract them? How do you reach out to them? How do you bring them in? Whether it's, different languages on your website that get interpreted, into different continents and different languages, whether it's doing roadshows in different countries. With me right now, I'm the exclusive partner of Christie's in New York for new developments. So all of our projects, and we've had a shared experience with Christie's in the past, where BHS was the exclusive partner for Christie's. But I take all my projects overseas. If I feel that the Asian clientele is going to be attracted to any one of my projects, I would take it to the auction house in Hong Kong. I would go to Singapore. I would go to Malaysia. I would do the same thing in India, because right now there's tremendous amount of capital that's moving out of India, and it's very difficult to get it invested in New York because of regulations and laws in India about moving money to New York or to the States. But I'll take it to India. And I'll go to their front door and I'll talk to the brokers on the ground, and I'll actually, get buyers on the ground, and I'll try to attract them to my project. So if you have that global reach, if you have that global network where you can take your property and market it overseas, whether in person or by way of social media, by way of websites, by way of magazine advertising, etc., that's an added plus and an added value in terms of marketing your product.
It's a tremendous added value, and it does work. I was on a project many, many years ago where my developer did nothing but travel around selling that building. And believe me, I sold it out, 108 units in like 90 days. It was unbelievable.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Amazing how everybody kept saying to me, how did you sell that building so quickly? How were you selling? And this is right after the 2008 financial crash. And everybody's like, you want to come and work for me? You want to come and work? I'm like, no, I'm fine where I am. Thank you. Anyway, we got to take a quick break. No one's going anywhere. We have much more to talk about as Talking New York Real Estate is just getting underway on this Tuesday morning. We will be right back.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, It's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay, Susan, let me ask you, so how, talking about international buyers, foreign buyers, whatever, they purchase here, whether it's for investment, whether, as you said earlier, for their children, because they're going to school here, or because they want to live here for whatever reason, how do they typically, because this is always a question I get, how do they typically finance, or do they finance this transaction, or is it all cash? Now, we know in certain clip levels, it's cash, certain not. How do they do it? Is it an LLC's, trust, all cash deals? What's the typical international buyer scenario?
Those are two questions.
Yes, it is.
First of all, they usually buy in an LLC, unless they're going to,
Limited liability company, very big here in New York.
Yeah. I think that it depends upon their country of origin also, and inheritance laws, and how they work that out. I don't get involved in advising in that capacity because I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a tax accountant, and I always refer to professionals. Okay?
Law of agency, man. You stick to what you know.
I do.
Perfect.
I do.
And it shows.
I used to teach continuing ed
I know you
too.
did.
Okay.
I know you did.
At NYU. Anyway, that being said, most of my transactions have been cash. It's very difficult for a foreigner to obtain financing. If they're going to live here permanently, sometimes it's easier. But in most cases, and from my perspective, in all of my cases, they're cash. Remember, the profile of a foreign buyer, especially, for example, Europeans, the greatest wealth in all of these families is in real estate. So this is the commodity that they're most comfortable with. And buying something here is just a part of their family portfolio. And it goes into the family trust. And it'll go generationally. They won't usually sell it. They'll keep it, pass it on, but they buy more. They buy maybe something small to begin with, and then they continue, and they buy more. They have family members that, different groups, for example, Indians do buy a lot more.
Absolutely.
They'll buy one, they'll buy another. So different groups buy for different purposes. They want to make sure that there's a place. Someone told me once, this is my second airport. In other words, it's a safer place. If they have to leave, they can leave in a hurry. I remember in the 80s.
That's very true. I've heard that too.
Yeah, my second airport. In the 80s, when I was with Merrill, I would get calls from the West Coast because a lot of the Iranians resettled in California and they bought a lot of real estate. And there, of course, you had the escrow situation. And so at the escrow table, a third party would come to want to collect their fees. And our agents were
in California, they
crazy.
call escrow really at the closing.
Yes,
But it's basically
exactly.
the same thing, yeah.
So, of course, different cultures provide different nuance, and you have to be aware of that as well. But they're big investors in real estate, and different groups have different characteristics, and you have to recognize that and be sensitive to it. So, in all aspects of a transaction with a foreign client, I always have my experts around me that I can refer to. It's very important.
Shlomi, in the new development arena where you play mostly, do you see more cash deals? And or at what particular price points do you see that? And are there any other legal ramifications that international buyers must adhere to that maybe domestic buyers don't have to?
Sure. So I will say that I think without exception, at least if I think back the past 6 to 9 months, every foreign buyer deal that we've made was in cash. Exception of one. Happens to be from Canada. So in general, they come.
There's that word again, Canada.
They come very prepared, whether it's from Mexico, Asia, Europe, etc. They have their lawyers lined up. They normally work with an agent who has given them the information that they need in order to purchase. They understand the process of getting an LLC done. They buy under an LLC, and they have their cash ready. This is money that they have. I agree with you. They look at they look at their portfolio and they diversify. And buying in New York is important, and buying real estate in New York is important. These are normally global citizens, I will call them. Yeah. They're affluent. They vacation in different parts of the world. Living in New York, the lifestyle in New York is just their lifestyle. So they buy in cash. Now, I did have a transaction just very recently, Canadian citizen who who needed financing. We normally do not do mortgage contingency financing in our contracts. In new developments, it's normally a cash transaction. As far as the contract is concerned, you can borrow, but I made an exception in this deal. We liked the deal, and we gave them a mortgage contingency, and the bank did not approve them because they were from Canada. Mm. So their broker, who was a very good broker, had to go very quickly and find them another bank to finance them, and we are closing. But I will say, with the exception of this deal, my transactions in the past have been almost 100% for foreign buyers, cash.
Yeah, and as I talk about and continuing it all the time, in that particular foreign investment class, not every bank has programs for foreign international buyers.
Right.
And they don't want to have. So you've got to be sharp enough to understand, if you work with enough of them, to find that bank or recommend those banks that have programs specifically tailored to the international set. Susan,
which, by the way, is a niche, right? So that's an opportunity
absolutely.
For non-traditional commercial banks to look at this landscape and say, whoa, you know what, there's a gap here. If I have a candidate with good finances and good credit and good et cetera, and I do my research, this is sort of a gap where I can provide a service that doesn't exist. Yeah. So it's a good opportunity for certain capital institutions. Yes.
Absolutely. We can't talk about foreign international buyers without talking about the United Nations, okay? And Susan, you and I talked a little bit about this before the show started. Many, many diplomats, in fact, you are a United Nations diplomat, correct? Many people from foreign lands who need to live here, need to work here, need to buy something here or rent something here. Tell us a little bit about your interactions with folks from the United Nations, diplomats or not. What are they doing? Are they renting more? Are they buying more? And in particular, what neighborhoods? I would assume Midtown East, because it's within walking distance of the UN.
Yeah. I deal primarily with rentals. Most of the missions, I work a lot with the Thai mission, the Austrian mission. I've worked with the French mission, the Philippines, other missions. They come to me because they're usually 4 to 6 times a year, they're circling some of their staff from all over the world. And it's very difficult for them to find apartments to rent. Many buildings won't allow diplomatic immunity. And so it's complicated for them, and they get very frustrated. They also have a housing budget allowance, and they cannot go above that. And I generally accept this kind of client because I do a service more than anything else to help them find housing. And yes, you're right. Generally, it's around the United Nations, and so that they can walk to work. They have late hours. Sometimes they're at the mission very late or at the UN in meetings very late. And as far as purchases are concerned, those generally are handled by commercial companies. Residential brokerage is primarily rental. Some of the acquisitions that were made recently from different countries, they really went through the commercial route. And I don't get that kind of business. I would love that kind of business, but they've never come to me to identify something to buy, a building or et cetera, or develop, like the Turkish mission was developed. And they built a building next to 50 UN Plaza. So I have, over the years, I would say the last 25, 30 years, handled at least 6 or 8 of those a year. And I do it as a, to really help them more than anything else.
As a
because
courtesy.
it's a pain to find buildings suitable, to connect, to bring it within the budget, etc. It's very difficult.
You mentioned diplomatic immunity a little while ago. Explain to our viewers and listeners what you mean by that and how that affects their housing choices or anything to do with housing.
Well, it means what it says, that as a diplomat, you're immune to any kind of issue that might come up that's relevant. They can't sue you. You could have one of your children damage a building, an elevator, for example, and they don't have any responsibility because they're immune. So the diplomatic clause prevents any kind of repercussion, and that makes it difficult to get someone into the building. And we write in different ways of dealing with that are personal. But the diplomat itself and the mission will not allow any kind of waiver of that diplomatic immunity.
Just as a side note here, the Kuwaiti Consulate General purchased in 2020 a penthouse of $16.1 million. Ireland's UN ambassador acquired a 4-bedroom penthouse at 695 First Avenue for $8.5 million. The British government spent $15.8 million, and the United States has purchased a full-floor penthouse in 2019, a while ago, for $15.8 million to serve as a resident for its U.S. ambassador. So Susan is correct. Most of the diplomats are renting, but the agencies or the bigger missions are buying bigger places to house their diplomats. Shlomi, talking now a little bit about new development in the hot spots I mentioned at the top of the show. Long Island City, one of them. Brooklyn is still on fire with new development, brand new development structures. What neighborhoods other than those two are really starting to show extreme interest to buyers out there, or where developers are going to build because buyers want to buy there? Outside of Long Island City, outside of Brooklyn, where in Manhattan, for example, for the longest time on the Upper East Side, we had a slew of brand new buildings. Upper West Side, where I live, there were 5 or 6 buildings in a period of 4 or 5 years. And I kept thinking, who's going to buy these? They're like 2 doors away from each other. There's so many of them. Mm-hmm. Where are the hot spots right now?
The hot spot...
I mean, it moves. I get it. But,
sure.
But where is it today?
The hot spot is where a developer can make money. It isn't necessarily about a specific location, though some developers just want to focus on very certain locations. But the environment of the city today for development is such that it's very difficult to put together a deal that makes sense. Properties are still very expensive. Up until very recently, with the recent tax abatement laws, it was impossible to create a pro forma to make a deal work. You can't pencil it in.
Nope.
Construction cost is high. Cost of money is very high. So it was just very difficult to put together deals. So a developer would go where the pro forma actually makes sense. So take the location you just mentioned, the stretch of the Upper East Side, First Avenue, 2nd and 3rd Avenues between 65th all the way to 90th Street, for example. You're right. There's a slew of new development projects there that are coming up. Some of them have been absorbed very well. Some of them a little more difficult to get absorbed. But if there was a deal that made sense in the 70s on 3rd Avenue where you can buy the land at a certain cost that actually makes sense, where you could sell and make money, someone will come, buy it, and develop it. Now, where in the city do I see changes and what's in terms of looking ahead 2 years from now, 3 years from now, because that's how a developer looks at a deal, right? It's not from today to tomorrow because it takes time to buy the site, takes time to build it, to design it and build it, and then to sell it and to actually make money on it. It could be a 2 to 4 year process, 5-year process. Between now and then, what's changing in the city? Is there a migration of wealth someplace, right? Are there new trends that are creating new hubs in certain areas in the city? And it's very difficult to kind of look at the city today and say, where's the next new thing? Because the city is developed everywhere,
Yeah, I was going to say, when you say land, where do you buy land? You don't. There's no available land, right?
So, like, you look at, back in the 80s and the 90s, we looked at Alphabet City. And Alphabet City is no longer, right? This is now the East Village, and it's fully developed. And it's not like it's a dangerous area to live in, or I wouldn't go there. No, everything is developed. People live there, etc. Hell's Kitchen.
Very true.
Nobody says Hell's Kitchen anymore, right? It's Clinton now, and it's fully developed. Hudson Yards, look at what happened to that whole stretch.
Amazing.
Highline, look at what happened to the Highline. Harlem, you can look at every location in the city and say, it's fully developed. So where do I buy? Where's the next?
Right.
I'll tell you where I'm seeing changes, because not like you, you started in 1972. I tip my hat to you. That's like an unbelievable legacy in this industry, right? I started in 1986. It's going to be 40 years soon. So I've been selling and renting in this city for 40 years. And everywhere.
See, I am young. Just saying.
And I've seen the changes, and I've seen the movement. And what I find striking right now is the financial district. FIDI.
Again.
Which used to be for Wall Street bros,
I worked there.
right?
So nobody after 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
These guys in suits that went to work there, and 5 o'clock in the evening, the place was dead.
Empty.
Completely
Right?
dead.
Empty. No
Empty.
restaurants, no bars, no cafes, no schools,
Nothing.
nothing residential.
No.
Look at it today. A lot of it is COVID.
Thriving.
And a lot of it is value, right? When you look at the retail, when you look at the new restaurants that have opened up, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing, we have 2 projects in the financial district today. And I have one project on Broad Street, which is selling 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. It's a conversion of an older office. Beautiful project, selling at around $1,200 to $1,300 a foot. We're selling all day long because that price point.
12 or 1,300. That's
That's
amazing.
right. That's right. Big units, high ceilings, big kitchens, big closets. A lot of renters in the neighborhood now are buying, first-time renters,
Yeah,
first-time
I would think so.
owners. $1,200 to $1,300. How could you go wrong? It's cheaper than Brooklyn, Long Island City.
Oh,
So that's selling
by
well.
far. Yeah.
But then I'm representing another project, and I've seen a trend in the past few months that's incredible, not just in my project. People that had moved to FIDI or Battery Park City or South Tribeca, right, that intersection, 10, 15 years ago, and because they worked on Wall Street, they got studios or 1 bedrooms or small 2 bedrooms because that was the inventory stock in FIDI. Now they hooked up, they got partners, they got kids, their families, and they want to stay because the neighborhood changed tremendously. The lifestyle in the financial district right now is unreal in terms of parks and access to waterways and restaurants and bars and cafes. So what you have is demand for larger apartments, 3 and 4 bedroom apartments. Now, traditionally, no one built and designed 3 and 4 bedroom apartments in FIDI.
In that area, yeah.
Mostly smaller apartments because the demand was from single people. Now that there's demand for larger apartments, there's lack of product. So if you're looking for a 3-bedroom apartment today and you go on Street Easy in a financial district, as a family, because you want to send your kids there
And
to
one
school,
of the best schools, elementary schools in New York City is in that district.
PS
236.
150, which is in our building, was just voted the best elementary in the country.
Yeah.
On Greenwich Street,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's driving a lot of families to the neighborhood
Absolutely.
with kids, but there's no inventory of larger apartments, and that's where the niche is right now, and the opportunity for a clientele that's looking for a certain product that doesn't exist. So as a developer, if you're looking at the market today, instead of designing rentals, you might want to do condos. Instead of doing 1 and 2 bedroom condos where there's a lot of inventory, you might want to do larger because the upside is huge and the opportunity to actually increase real estate value is higher. Real quick, we had 4 bedrooms in this building, 77 Greenwich. We put them all on the market. In 2 weeks, we sold them all at price points of $4.3 to $5 million, which is not your average price point in a financial district. So if that's an indication for a neighborhood or a trend or sort of a niche, I would say that's one of those opportunities in the city right now.
Where in your book of business are people asking you to take them for new developments, or are they?
Downtown.
Downtown.
Yeah.
Just downtown in general,
Well,
lower than 14th Street, 23rd, or FIDI?
It depends.
Because it's always downtown, even in my business. It's always, I want to be downtown.
I think that it's age-driven also,
Yeah.
because I also have a great many people that work uptown, that want to be uptown. Now that the children are going to school and the families are growing, I also have uptown. But young people, downtown.
Yeah.
I'm finding, a great many people want to be downtown, and in all categories.
Yeah.
But it's age-driven. It really is. Also, Europeans have a tendency to want to be in Soho, Tribeca,
Well,
that.
of course they do.
Well, I mean, put it this way. If you're in your late 40s, early 50s, and you've done well, maybe you're in finance, maybe you're in high tech, who knows what. And let's say you have, kids. Where do you want to live in a city today that gives you a certain lifestyle in a product that's new, sexy, cool, new appliances, new design, etc.? Where are those opportunities? There's some on the Upper West Side, there's some on the Upper East Side where you mentioned. But downtown just offers a lifestyle and a certain culture that is really new and very appealing. That's why we're sitting at BHS's office. Terra Holdings is owned by the Zeckendorfs. The Zeckendorfs, who are brilliant, just put together a project at 80 Clarkson. Spectacular. Nobody really knows the data yet, but from what I understand, a very big portion of it is sold at crazy numbers.
Yeah.
Why? How do you explain that? Right? The
Location.
demand.
Right.
Well, but that location was not the location.
Yeah, that's right.
5-6 years ago.
That's right.
There was a certain vision there.
Right.
Google bought their headquarters
Right.
building for $2
Right
billion
next door.
a block away.
Absolutely.
next
But
door.
as you said before, as we've grown, as we've changed, as years have gone by, neighborhoods that you would never believe could
Correct.
gentrify or become hotspots have become. I agree with you. That place was not. All of a sudden, and by the time the Zeckendorfs finish with that, I guarantee you it's going to be on the map. People can say,
Oh,
hey,
yes. Oh,
I
yes.
want to be there.
And they're
but
also
that's a
developing
phenomenon
across the
because-
street.
What's
They're
that?
developing the recreational
Yeah.
areas. That was part of their
Correct.
transaction.
Absolutely.
But the level clientele that's going there and the type of money and capital that's being invested
Well,
there
that's it, yeah.
is not your 80% of the transactions in the city of
No.
$1 to $3 million.
No.
You're talking about properties at $6,000 per foot.
Yeah.
So what is that going to create in that area, right? Hudson Square, sort of South Village,
Absolutely.
etc. That's phenomenal to me. That's incredible. And the vision that the Zeckendorfs had is just genius.
They tend to have that kind of vision. Look what they did at 15 CPW. All right, we've got to take a quick break. We're not going anywhere. Talking New York real estate. We'll be right back on the More Network. Don't go anywhere.
When we first started Excel Real Property Management 11 years ago, we did so with the intention of protecting the investment community. Here at Excel Real Property Management, we focus specifically on serving the needs of individual apartments, townhouse, and small multifamily building owners both in Manhattan and select neighborhoods of Brooklyn. Our services encompass everything: rent collection, expense payment, handling maintenance and repair, turnover between tenants, insurance needs. Literally anything that an investor would typically handle him or herself, we take care of for them. Whether you hold one individual apartment or a rental building that houses 20 units, Excel is here to help with all of your specific needs.
Okay, we are back. How do new development trends in New York City align with changing lifestyles? I mean, Shlomi mentioned a whole bunch of new neighborhoods. You say, most younger people want to live, downtown. But there's a trend, I think. I remember I was selling a development on the Upper East Side in a neighborhood where I thought, oh boy, it's right by the tunnel. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be whatever. And the developer kept saying, oh, no, we're going to sell to hospital people because there's a lot of hospital up there, doctors, nurses, interns, whatever. And I said, no, we're going to get people from downtown wanting to move uptown. He kept saying, why? I said, one reason, the Q line, the 2nd Avenue subway, now drops you off 1.5 blocks away from this building. And sure enough, I was right. Most of the people I sold in that building came from downtown. That's a unique experience. It's usually the reverse, okay? But there were also family-sized apartments, larger apartments at the time that people wanted to live in. Where are we trending, other than the young people downtown, moneyed people and newer neighborhoods? What do developers think about when they're mapping out a development, buying a parcel of land or throwing a building down to build? What are they thinking about, meaning what people are looking for? Anytime we work with developers from the beginning, we sort of get involved in a very kind of sit down, let's discuss, let's understand your goals, how we can map this out. Room count is important. I remember talking to a developer many years ago who wanted to build 3 and 4 bedroom apartments in the West 30s. And I said, are you out of your mind? And we're talking a bunch of years ago. Are you out of your mind? who's going to push a baby carriage, who's going to walk a dog on West 35th Street between, 8th and whatever. Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Mm-hmm.
Well,
what are they thinking about, and how do you convince them that maybe they're making a bad choice?
Well, I think that it's clear. The developments that have been developed on the Upper East Side and Upper West Side primarily are large apartments.
Correct.
They're family apartments.
Right.
They accommodate 3 and 4 bedrooms, and they sell very quickly. They only have a few 1 bedrooms, if they do have any, or 2 bedrooms. The developer focuses on the big apartments, for the sake of schools. All the private schools primarily are uptown or accessible, more accessible.
Yeah.
They don't want their kids on a bus going from downtown all the way uptown.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's clear. That's the profile of those buildings, and they've sold very fast.
Yeah.
They really sell out within a matter of months.
Yeah. I remember there was a trend also. You're correct with the larger size apartments, but there was a trend when I was doing a lot of on-site, sales. There was a trend for developers to do the larger apartments, and all of a sudden we hit a snag, and I don't remember the years, probably after the financial shakedown in 8 and 9 and 10, where they started thinking, because buyers were out there, I want to buy a studio, I want to buy a 1-bedroom, but all these new developments are 2, 3, and 4-bedroom apartments. I can't even buy an apartment. Mm-hmm. So then they started cutting up units to be more in line with what the market was asking, and then redeveloping or starting new developments with studios again and 1-bedrooms and a good unit mix. Do you see that today?
So,
or is that not happening?
We can sit here for the next 2 hours and I can analyze it to you data by data. We don't have that much time, but I'll put it this way. If you build anything in this city and you wait long enough, it will sell.
Oh, 100%.
So what does that mean? So let's say you build a building in that location we just mentioned, larger apartments, so all you built is studios and 1-bedrooms, and not large apartments.
Right.
It all depends on the financial cycles of this city. And it all depends on the economy. It all depends on politics. It all depends on how well the city does. So what you just mentioned about certain apartments that had to be cut up, in 2018, 19, and 20, right before COVID, there was massive inventory on the market of new development projects that were designed 5 years prior with larger apartments that couldn't sell. Mm-hmm. Massive. If you had gone on Street Easy and did a search between $5 and $10 million or $5 and $15 million, inventory came up that was sitting on the market for years. Mm-hmm. Now, why didn't they sell? If large apartments sell, and it was across the city, why didn't they sell? They didn't sell because the timing wasn't right. Mm-hmm. Smaller apartments at that time sold. Studios, 1-bedrooms, and small 2-bedrooms, because people were looking to invest smaller amounts of money for smaller units. Now, those units that had to be cut up, or those units that had to be discounted in order to sell in 18, 19, if you had waited long enough, after COVID, they would have all sold. But a developer cannot wait. Because if a developer waits long enough, the banks comes knocking because their terms expire with the bank. And if they can't pay the loan on time, the bank takes over, right? So there's been situations like that. But let me give you a very quick example. When I was here in 2010, we designed a building on the Upper West Side called the Laureate. And the Laureate is on 76 and Broadway across the street from a building called the Harrison. Mm-hmm. The Harrison was developed by the related companies.
Oh, I remember the Harrison very well.
Me too.
We designed it at the same time. The Harrison was designed mostly smaller apartments, your traditional studios, 1-bedrooms, small 2-bedrooms.
Correct.
With very small percentage of larger apartments, 3 and 4 bedrooms. Yep. And that percentage was mostly smaller efficient units, 1,700 square foot, 3 bedrooms, maybe 2,000 square foot, 4 bedrooms. We looked at the Laureate across the street and we saw a trend. We saw a trend of where we're coming out of the recession. People made a lot of money on Wall Street, but weren't spending it yet. This is about 2010. And families from Tribeca were looking for schools uptown. And we saw a trend of owners of brownstones and townhouses on the Upper West Side where kids left the house, and now they're in their 60s, and they own 6,000 square foot homes that have to be maintained with no parking and no amenities. And we said, no, this is going to change. We should build larger apartments to accommodate for all that. And that was a very risky proposition. Our smallest 3-bedroom was 2,100 square feet. We went all the way to 6,000 square foot units. And you know what? The developer calls me, I was a stall organization, like at the height of the collapse. And I remember having that conversation with Will Zeckendorf as well at the time. And he said to me, Shlomi, we designed an incredible building here. Are you sure? Are you sure about this unit mix? Because we still have the time to take these big units and cut them up into smaller apartments and sell 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms that are at a lower price point. Because we had 76 apartments at an average price of $6.5 million. Massive price.
Yeah.
And then when we went to market, the decision that we made all the difference. There was a massive migration to the Upper West Side from Tribeca families that wanted to go to send their kids to school here. There was incredible amount of demand from townhouse owners. And there was so much pent-up demand with buyers from 2008, 9, and 10 that just didn't know what to do with their money. We sold over $500 million. Over $500 million in product. You as an on-site agent, you would appreciate this, in 8 months.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
This office upstairs,
I would love
445,
that. Absolutely.
on the 11th floor, I sold 25% of the building, about $150 million in 2 months. From this office without showing an apartment.
That's incredible.
To show you, right, the vision and the guts of a developer to make a decision about something that he foresaw into the future, right? A trend in terms of what they should be building. So the unit mix is everything, but cycles in the city, the economy, what we're going through at any given time, that dictates the demand, the supply, who buys, at how much, et cetera.
Well, let me just follow up with one
Absolutely.
thought to that. What that really...
That was 4 minutes of a 2-hour discussion.
You got it.
But what that really clearly says is that all those people that were wanting, those young people that were going downtown to buy their dream downtown apartment, got together, got married, had children, and now they're moving uptown.
You think?
I do.
That's interesting.
I do.
That's interesting. I think there is an element of that.
I was going to say there's an element of that. I agree. Again, cyclical.
I do, but I see
change.
it because it's very hard to find
Co-ops or condos?
condos.
So what happens to all these co-ops on Park and Fifth and Sutton Place, et cetera?
That's a good question. The problem is that young people don't want
That's
to.
a very good question. I was going to ask about that, but go ahead.
Great values, great space, but people don't want to renovate. And almost everything that you see
In co-op.
Yes,
Yes.
needs renovation.
What about ownership structure in terms of a co-op versus a
Ownership
condo?
structure is not difficult. Most of these people can pass a board.
No,
It has nothing to do with that.
Not sure, but
At least
not
my
just passing a
clients,
board.
I
Yeah,
mean-
they're financially able, but the
So-
scrutiny and the...
We're talking about international or domestic. Domestic, it doesn't make a difference. And-
International,
but
not co-op.
international buyers can pass a board.
Can they?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I've done it many times.
So what I'm seeing in new developments with my clientele normally that comes and buys, for example, I have a building on the Upper West Side, very large units, and a lot of these buyers are also looking at co-ops. Now the demographic is, I would say, probably early 50s, late 40s, families with kids that can easily pass a board, easily, right, financially. But they specifically want to buy in a condo because they don't want to go through the approval process. They
The
don't.
undressing, as I
if they
call
don't
it.
have to, they don't want to. Not that they won't pass. They'll pass the interview. They'll pass the financials. No problem. They're very liquid, but they want to buy in a condo. They don't want the scrutiny. They don't want the guidelines of you can only rent for this much and this much, etc.
We talked about this last week on the show, how co-ops are all of a sudden back in fashion in
Right.
this new market, meaning sluggish, interest rate issues, first-time buyers, whatever, sleeping still.
Price per square foot value.
Price per square foot value, because they look at the listings, they don't know really what they're looking at. They look at the pricing. Well, why is this one cheaper than this one? Yeah, maybe I get the fact that I have a lot more flexibility and freedom in a condo, but I got to look at the price. So you're both making great points. I'm curious to see where the co-op market continues to go throughout 2025, but it has shown an uptick in interest. But I still have to say, and not because of my love for new developments, because I spent most of my career doing that, I still see brand new condo development apartments on top of everybody's mind.
Yes.
Lots of people want brand new. I used to hear all the time when I was on site, I want to be the first person in the unit. I don't want to move into anything or buy anything that anyone else has owned before. On and on and on and on. I get that. Why not? If you can do it, but the price per square foot these days is a little higher. Show me what is the
just
what
one
is the,
point.
Go
One
ahead.
point, because there's something else in new developments that makes it more attractive. You can't change pre-war co-ops anymore. You can't change pre-war condos anymore.
No.
You can't change buildings, condo buildings that were built in the 80s and 90s. The low ceilings, the PTAC units, the small windows, the level of amenities. But you can design differently into the future with new developments based on trends.
Correct.
So wellness, for example, services and amenities, the kind of lifestyle that you see.
What
right
about
now,
green technology?
ceiling heights, size of kitchens, whether kitchen is enclosed or open, size of windows, storage areas, accessory spaces within an apartment, like for home offices, for sleeping areas, for storage, etc. If you're able to design a product that's a very appealing product based on demand in the marketplace, and offer it at a good price with services and amenities and lifestyle that gets extended beyond your doorstep, then that's value. Because you're not just buying an apartment. You're buying a lifestyle. You're buying into services that you can invite your friends, where you can host, where you can enjoy, you can live, you can work, and you can play as well. I'll give you an example. We're doing conversions right now. I have about 1 million square feet right now that we're designing, brand new projects in the city, all conversions. Hotel to resi and office buildings to resi. All of these buildings we're designing right now anywhere from 50 to 70,000 square feet of amenities and services. Anything you can think of, you have in the building. Now, if you buy an apartment for $2 million in a different building and you get a doorman and a small lounge and a gym, versus an apartment here for $2.2 million, or maybe 10% more, but you get a world of amenities and services and lifestyle, then that's where the difference is.
People want the experience.
Right. And you cannot do that with existing inventory stock in the city. You can only do it with brand new projects.
That's very true, but as you said before, it really is individually based. There are people who like that. There are people who need that or want that.
Right.
I mean, I used to joke all the time, I can sell this building with a boatload of amenities and go into the gym and there's no one ever there.
Well, that's
go up
true.
to the rooftop, there's no one ever there.
That's true.
It's like whatever. Okay,
Right.
and I've sold many buildings, but they have to have it.
Right. And foreign investors, that is what we find that is appealing to them.
It is appealing.
What more can I get for that $1 million, for that $2 million, for that $5 million?
But it also makes a difference if they're going to live here and use it.
Yeah.
I have clients that come once a year, and they don't rent it. I maintain their property for them.
Correct.
I'm there all the time. I arrange for the cleaning every week. I arrange for everything to maintain their investment, but they only come once a year.
But there's a psychology and a philosophy behind that as well. Look at 217 West 57th Street, right? Central Park Tower. I represented the penthouse for $150 million there. There are many foreign buyers in that building. It's not all local buyers, right? From the Middle East, from Asia, from India, etc. Now, let's say I buy an apartment for $50 million in that building, and I only use it once a year. I come in for 1 week with my family. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter that nobody uses the amenities. It doesn't matter that I don't use the amenities. What I do know is that I bought in the best building on the best block, right?
Yes, of course.
That has all the amenities in the world, will always be there, and I can afford it.
Yes.
That's it. My investment
And they're concerned
is
about
safe.
resale and amenities on a resale
That's true.
side.
So you have to
That's
check
true.
the box in terms of a developer, whether they use it or not, whether it's enjoyable or not. You'll provide the lifestyle. They'll be able to afford to pay for it, right? And it's there. You just have to check that box.
Last question, because we're running out of time. This is going to be a part 2, trust me, because there's a lot we didn't get to today. How important, whether it's new condo, whether it's resale, whether it's whatever, how important are things like parks, schools, transportation? I mean, in the past, transportation was a biggie, right? I need to be close to a train. Now that we have a lot more trains on the east side, it's a lot easier. But today, especially in new development, Shlomi, do people put importance on that? Schools are always number one importance. I need to move closer to a school district.
Correct.
But what else? I mean, do they really pay a lot of attention?
Let me turn the question on you. And we just said how the city changed a lot. Show me a neighborhood in the city that doesn't have transportation, doesn't have parks, and doesn't have daily conveniences.
There isn't
It doesn't
one.
exist.
No.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
But your point is 100% correct. Schools are very, very important. So if you do research on schools, private schools in the city today, right? I have a building on the Upper West Side. It's 3 blocks away from Trinity. You cannot get a spot on Trinity. You can't get your kid in there.
No.
It doesn't matter how much money you have.
No.
But they can go across the park to an equally good school.
But what does that mean about the demand for large apartments close to schools in the city, right? So if you want to be near, if you want your kid to go to a certain school and they get accepted,
They're not building any bigger schools or any more schools.
correct.
Trust me.
But most likely you'll probably end up in a neighborhood that's within proximity to these schools. But otherwise, everything is accessible, and especially with Uber today, especially with these, all these apps that you can just order a car no matter
absolutely.
where you are.
Absolutely.
Transportation is not what it used to be, in terms of convenience. These conveniences exist.
Right.
And I think the city has done an amazing job in terms of public spaces and in terms of parks, in terms of there's much more that can be done in terms of the subway, in terms of safety in the city and cleanliness. But I think overall it's a very, very user-friendly city. And I think everybody feels that's coming in from like the West Coast and foreign buyers. They feel that quality in the city, that lifestyle in the city.
And that puts a period on that because, as I said at the top of the show, this is a city that never sleeps. This is a city that, everybody needs to be in, wants to be in, has to be in for a whole host of reasons: jobs, investment, foreign, domestic. It is New York City, and we're coming right back with my final thoughts. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you hear a lot about how crucial it is to have the right partners in this industry. At Roadway, we don't just move your clients, we give them an experience they'll love. Specialized services to our white glove treatment, it's all about making sure your clients feel taken care of every step of the way. And if you're looking for a rewarding referral program, reach out to me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everyone, we're back with my final thoughts for this week. Over the past decade, both new condo development and international buyer behavior in New York City has undergone significant transformation. In the early 2010s, the luxury condo boom focused heavily on the ultra-wealthy foreign investors, with soaring towers like 157 and 432 Park Avenue offering trophy properties marketed globally as safe haven assets. Developers prioritized opulence, skyline views, and brand name architects to attract cash-rich international buyers, especially from China, Russia, and the Middle East, as we talked about. However, over time, and particularly post-2016, international scrutiny on wealth, capital outflow restrictions, and shifting global politics began to curb unchecked demand. The COVID pandemic further accelerated change, prompting developers to rethink design and function, emphasizing health-conscious amenities, flexible layouts, and outdoor space. Today's international buyers are more selective, value-driven, and often younger or investment-focused. New developments now target a broader spectrum of global buyers with smaller unit mixes, improved price per square foot value, and a stronger emphasis on digital access, sustainability, and location convenience. The luxury market remains active but is no longer fueled solely by global billionaires. It's evolving to serve a more diverse and strategic international clientele. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guest for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Substack, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And John Wooden said, if you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over? And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the globe, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I'm so grateful, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.